Good morning or afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeremy Walsh, and I am the Director of Support, Training, and Documentation for BNI Connect. I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. Today's webinar is on the chapter goals for leadership teams. So what we're going to be going through today is how you can enter goals for your chapter into a nice little function here in BNI Connect, and then also it's going to show you how you can track your goals throughout the year so that as you're going through your leadership team term, it will follow along with you and insert the results based on the POMS report. A couple of housekeeping things before we get started with today's presentation. To answer your question, Gloria, all of these webinars are indeed recorded, so it is a live webinar, which is great because I can answer questions as we're going through. The best way to ask your questions is to type them in, just like Gloria did, and Sid has a question pending as well. I'll be able to see those questions pop up on the screen and answer them as we're going through. The recordings will be made available shortly after the webinar. They are made available in two different places. The first place that you can look for them is on the support site. The way to get to the support site is to click this question mark here in the upper right-hand corner of BNI Connect. That will take you over to the support site. You'll see here our list of upcoming webinars, but if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see chapter training and documentation. There's all sorts of stuff in here, as well as a manual for how to enter chapter goals. But under recorded webinars, you'll see them broken out month by month. For example, here's all of last month webinars, and you can go through and review any of those webinars. Most of the time, the content is generally the same. However, the questions are always different based on the people that we have on the webinar. So here's a copy of the one that we did on September 18th. You can view it right here on the support site, or you can be taken to our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. And this is where we have a ton of additional videos. So aside from just the webinars, the recorded webinars, we do have special messages from Dr. Meisner, some pre-release demos. We also have a whole series of educational moments that you can use as either learning opportunities, or you can share them with the chapter. Let's see, Sid had a quick question. Before we get started, from BNI Connect, when we send out the visitor invitation, I don't believe it gives a copy to us, the senders, and that's correct, Sid. The visitor invitation just sends the invitation to the potential visitor. That is the only copy that goes out, but if you'd like to see what it says, send one to yourself. So it doesn't record the information anywhere or do any tracking or anything like that, but you can send a copy to yourself if you'd like to see what it looks like. So, all right, the address again, that's youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. So Colin, let me type that for you in your question here, and there it is for you. Okay, I'll put it in as a chat message for everybody as well. All right. All right, any other questions before we get started? All right, so let's take a look at these chapter goals. This, by the way, is based on a series called the Goal Planning 101 series. If you'd like more information about Goal Planning 101, it is something that a man named Tom Fleming and I believe Dan Georgievich came up with. They're executive directors in Florida and in Michigan, respectively. So if you'd like more information about that, please do talk to your executive director who can put you in touch with the right people. What we're going to be going through today is the actual physical process of entering the goals onto BNI Connect. So let's take a look at that. Now, we need to find where to put this stuff. So a lot of people say to me, well, I don't know where to go. I don't know where to click stuff and find stuff in BNI Connect. Here's a little hint for you. This front page has all of the stuff that we're going to do on a mostly day-to-day basis. We're going to pass our referral slips. We're going to put in our thank you for closed business and one-to-one slips. At the end of the webinar today, make sure that you put a CEU slip in for yourself for today's webinar. The place to find the other things in BNI Connect is these menu options up at the top. You have Network, Operations, Reports. Some people will also see Tools and Admin. Now, Network is where all of the social media functions are. That's where we're going to go to participate in the discussion groups and our connections with other BNI members around the world. The testimonials and also a picture gallery. Now, operations and reports. Operations is we're going to go to do input. So that's where most of the management functions are going to be under operations. Reports is to get all information back out. So that's where we're going to get our statistical reports, like our POMS report and the traffic lights report and the member training report, all of that stuff. So the place that we want to go when we want to input our goals is to go to the operations menu. So we're going to go to operations and then the chapter submenu. Harvey says, what does TYFCB stands for? And that stands for thank you for closed business. So it's when somebody, if you had passed me a referral and that referral turned into business for my company, I would then submit a thank you for closed business to you, and you would get credit for generating that amount of money for my business. So hopefully that answers your question, Harvey. All right, so now that we're under the operations menu, there's a number of things here that we can do if we're managing visitors or managing the meeting, such as entering POMs. But you'll notice the fourth option down is manage goals. And you'll have two options here. The first option says enter chapter goals. The second option says view chapter goals. So enter chapter goals is where we're going to go to input our chapter goals. Now, a lot of people say, well, who has access to enter the chapter goals? By default, the president, the vice president, and the secretary treasurer. If you happen to be on the call from the UK or another country, that would be the chapter director, the membership coordinator, and the secretary. So those top three leadership team positions do have the ability to enter goals. By default, other chapter members can follow along and view chapter goals. So they can see the results, whereas you on the leadership team would be able to enter the chapter goals. If for some reason you're not seeing either of these or you don't see managed goals at all, it might be that you're not in position yet, you're not coded in as the leadership team in BNI Connect. The best thing to do would be to talk to your executive director or your director consultant for your chapter and ask them when that might happen or why the function isn't available. By the way, one other thing, if after this webinar you'd like more information about entering goals, if you can remember your way back here, you'll see a question mark next to many of the functions in BNI Connect. That will bring you to a help document specifically for that function. So if I click on this question mark here, this will take me to the help document that walks through step by step everything to do with chapter goals. So that resource is available for you as well. So let's take a look at entering chapter goals. If I click entering chapter goals, the next screen that comes up is the first part of entering your goals. And that is, we're going to pick a 6-month period. We can enter our goals for any 6-month period at a time. Now, of course, you can go out for a full year if you'd like to, but we can only display 6 months on the screen at a time. So you do need to pick which 6-month period you're going to be entering the goals for. Now, by default, it's going to show us the next typical BNI 6-month period, which happens to start in April at this point. But let me bring that back. You can change the date. So I'd like to go back and start it from today, October 2014. The next two things that we need to come up with is a long-term vision and a mission statement for our chapter. So the long-term vision is really, you're kind of setting the stage for where you'd like to get to at the end of your term. Whereas the mission statement is really how you're going to get there, or the why behind you getting to that long-term vision. So here up in Antarctica, this is my test region up in the cold lands in the Shiver region. For my Burr chapter, I came up with a long-term vision that we would like to grow this chapter to be the largest chapter in the entire continent. In addition, we wish to be the #1 chapter in closed business and referrals within a 200-mile radius. So that's my long-term vision for the Burr chapter. Now the mission statement, why are we doing what we're doing and how are we going to get there? We're going to do this in order to help members increase their business through a structured, positive, and professional word-of-mouth program that enables them to develop long-term, meaningful relationships with quality business professionals and create positive community goodwill. Now again, these are my vision for the Burr chapter, what you need to do is come up with your own vision and your own mission statement. And you can do that as a leadership team. And of course, always work with your director consultant or your executive director who can give you some insight into that as well. Once you've got this all squared away, click the Go button. Now what this is going to do is bring up basically a spreadsheet that we're going to fill out with all of our chapter goals in them. You'll notice that it's broken into months, so we have the current month, October, then November, December, January, February, March. So it has this 6-month period based on what your start date. And then you have what we call the chapter success drivers. Now they're just in, we have attendance percentage, we have the total number of one-to-ones, we have the CEUs or chapter education units, we have visitors, new memberships, total number of members in the chapter, number of referrals, and finally, thank you for closed business. Now for each of these chapter success drivers, you'll also notice 3 boxes that we can fill out. The first of which is, what is our goal? So what is our goal number for that? And then you'll see 2 boxes for mechanisms. Now the mechanisms are different things that you can do in your chapter to support those goals. So in other words, in order to increase our attendance percentage, what could we do during that month in order to support that? You'll also notice at the top of the screen that we have the opportunity to enter the goals based on one of 2 criteria. And this helps to, what this does is it calculates the goals out when we go to view them with the results later. So would you like to enter your goals as a whole chapter? So you're looking at a big number, in other words. Or do you want to enter the goals on a per member basis, which is a smaller number? One thing to keep in mind about the per member basis is that when you're entering the goals, it'll do the calculations based on your target number of members, not the actual number of members that are in the chapter at the time. Now, most people that I've worked with in the past, they tend to use the for the whole chapter numbers, so that the things like the one-to-ones and the CEUs, we're looking at that big number for the whole chapter. And that's how I'm going to proceed with the goals today. We do have a couple of questions that have come up. Kathy asks, how many CEU credits do these webinars count for? And there is a line on the online slip that has this listed as a 1 credit. And then Tom says, can you access a history of chapter goals? And yes, if you just choose a previous period, you'll be able to access those previous chapter goals, both on the entering of chapter goals, again, if you need to go back and do corrections or anything like that, as well as to go back and look at the view chapter goals. You can go to any period of time, past, present, or future. So hopefully that answers your 2 questions there. All right, so let's take a look at some of these chapter success drivers. The first one that we have on the list here is attendance percentage. Now, attendance percentage is pretty straightforward. What would you like to have for an attendance percentage? Now, one of the things that I like to do when I'm working with these goals is I like to begin with the end in mind. So I actually like to work backwards. So where do I want to get to, and then figure out how I'm going to get there. So up here in the Burr chapter, we tend to have a little bit of trouble getting people to the meetings because it's so cold and polar bears are attacking along the way. But I do know that by the end of this 6-month period, we are going to get to a 100% attendance. Right now, though, I know that we're only averaging about 85% attendance. So maybe by the end of October, I probably want to get to maybe 86% attendance. So I kind of know where we are right now, and I know where I want to get to. And now what I can do is kind of split the difference along the way. So I know that that's about 12 over 6 months, so maybe I'm going to go up by about 2 to 3 percentage points every month. So maybe by November, we're going to be up to 89%, and then maybe 92%, and then maybe 95%, and then maybe 98%, and finally up to 100%. Now, the mechanisms are the things, again, that we can do to support our goals. So maybe this first month, what I'd like to do is to announce the goals. So a lot of times what we do, I've been on leadership team. I just got stepped down from being the president for the last 12 months. But one of the things that we often do is that we kind of go from week to week, and we don't really have a plan in place for the entire year or the entire 6-month period. And a lot of times that's just because we're doing other things besides BNI. So we have our regular everyday jobs. So by the time we get around to our chapter meeting, oh yeah, I forgot I wanted to talk about this, or I wanted to do this in the chapter. This can kind of help you come up with a game plan for your entire term, so that you're not always waiting until the last minute to come up with ideas for that month or for that week. So maybe this first month I want to make sure that we announce our goals to the chapter. And that way, hopefully, the whole chapter will be on board. And maybe this month, I'm also going to have the educational coordinator do a presentation on the importance of being at the meeting. So maybe an educational moment on being present. And then as we're moving into the upcoming months, maybe next month I want to make sure that our membership committee is sending out all of the control letters. And so on and so forth. And I can follow through with all of these different mechanisms through the entire 6-month period. Now, if you'd like some additional ideas for mechanisms especially, the best thing to do is to, first of all, you can talk to your director consultant. That's what they're there for. But also, you can click on Chapter Goal Guide up here in the upper right-hand corner. Now, the Chapter Goal Guide will give you some possible mechanisms for each success driver. So here's a couple of other ideas. Maybe educate members on how and where to find a substitute. Maybe you can implement the mentoring program or have a bring your substitute day. So these are all different ideas for supporting the attendance. Let's see, we do have a couple of questions. I think it's Socorro asks, what happens when a member is often late? And again, for dealing with that, I would definitely have a word with your membership committee about talking with that member, and then definitely talk with your director consultant. You may have different things in your region as well that you might be able to implement, such as probationary, other education opportunities, and things like that. So definitely talk with your director consultant. Teresa says, how can you figure out the attendance percentage? And the attendance percentage, you can find that on the chapter traffic lights report. If you have access to that, it will show it. Otherwise, you can calculate it manually in the POMS report if you need to. Otherwise, what I'm going to show you is after you get this filled out, this will calculate out automatically based on the POMS report for you. So I'm going to be showing you that in just a couple of minutes. Robin says, what are control letters, please? So the control letters is if you're absent twice, your vice president or membership coordinator or membership committee sends out a letter saying, just to let you know, you've had your second absence. On the third absence, it gives them a little bit of a sterner warning. And on the fourth absence, it lets them know that they might be opening up their position. But again, those should be in the hands of the vice president. And if you're unsure about the letters themselves, please do check with your director consultant. Miriam says, what if you don't reach your goals? Well, if you don't reach your goals, one thing you can do is to try to make up for that lost time over the course of the rest of your term. Or you can always go back and revise your goals. Maybe you bit off a little bit more than you can chew way back in the beginning, and you can go back and revise them. Sheila says, can non-leadership team members have access to the chapter goal guide? They can't because they can't get in here, but what you could do is just open this up, highlight it, and if you need to, copy and paste it into a Word document or into an email and share it that way as well. Let's see. All right, so let me move on to the next success driver, which is total number of one-to-ones. Now, the total number of one-to-ones, the CEUs, and the number of referrals in our chapter, what we came up with as a guide for our chapter is to make sure that every member is passing one referral per week, one CEU per week, and one-to-one per week. So that's our goal for each member of our chapter. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use that as a basis for coming up with our calculations for total number of one-to-ones. And the way I'm going to do that is currently we have, let's say, 25 people in our chapter. That would be 4 weeks in a standard month, so I'm going to call that 100 one-to-ones if everybody is doing one-to-one. Now, I know by the end, we'd like to get our chapter from 25 members to 50 members, and that would be about 200 one-to-ones a month. And again, like I did up there, I can try to break this down and work my way backwards accordingly and kind of split the difference here. Maybe I want to do 140, 180, 220, 260, or 100. Let me do 120, 140, 160, and 180. And that way I'm working my way up to that 200 mark. I could also put in mechanisms. So how are we going to increase the total number of one-to-ones? And here you can even put activities of things that you'd like to do. So for example, let's say that you wanted to do a special meeting stimulant that everybody exchanges a business card and has a one-to-one with the person that they exchanged a business card with. So you could do, let's say, the business card exchange. And maybe I know that in the winter months, or in December, January, and February, that tends to be holiday periods. So I'd like to do something a little bit more interactive of, let's say, the BNI game. We can run a BNI game for our chapter, and I know that that usually goes for about 6 to 8 weeks. So that one's going to take the mechanism for 2 months here. Now, as I said, my number of one-to-ones and CEUs are going to be the same, so I'm just going to go through and fill this out here. And the other good thing as you're going through this is that sometimes the mechanism can go across multiple months or multiple success drivers. So the BNI game is something that actually supports CEUs because we're going to assign points to CEUs. It will also help to increase attendance percentage, so I'm copying and pasting them in there. It will also help with visitors. It'll also help with new memberships, which will help with the number of members in the chapter. It'll help with the number of referrals, and it should help with thank you for closed business as well. So I'm able to make some pretty good progress on the form here by looking at it in its entirety. And I've gotten a couple of questions here. What is the BNI game? So the BNI game, if you are a chapter president or a chapter director, you may have been given in your president's packet a list of meeting stimulants in the chapter toolkit. One of the things that's in that chapter toolkit is a thing called the BNI game. And what the BNI game does is you take your chapter and you divide them into 2, 3, 4 teams, usually in the form of depending on how big your chapter is, but usually 4, 5, 6 people per team. And then what you do is you take all of the great things that we're doing in BNI and you assign a point value to them. Now it does have a default point value in the form, but you can really make that point value whatever you'd like, and my recommendation is that you weight it to things that you're trying to drive in the chapter. So for example, showing up on time would be, let's say, 5 points. And maybe having a CEU that week is another 5 points, or maybe you really want to grow your chapter, so bringing visitors is an important part of growing that chapter. Maybe bringing a visitor is worth 25 points, and if that visitor becomes a member, maybe that's worth 50 points or even 100 points. And then your team every week would sum up their total number of points. You could announce them, and at the end, you can compete against the other teams that are in the chapter. Usually towards the end of the game, you have some type of a chapter event of some sort in order to celebrate the victory. Maybe you have an after-hours event that you can invite visitors to, and maybe the winning team gets a round of drinks, or doesn't have to clean up after the party or something like that. So all different implementations of that. But generally, it's kind of splitting the team apart and splitting the group into teams, and it just brings that competitiveness out, I guess. So does that help for the people that asked that question? Any follow-up questions? And Victoria had said, why does the BNI game help CEUs? And really, it can help any of these categories, because you can assign point values to them. So again, let's say that you're having trouble implementing the CEU program and you'd like to really emphasize that. You can assign 10 points for each CEU that they get during that game period. So does that help? Victoria and Gloria, Maria, all ask questions on that? All right, there's a couple of other previous questions here. Let's see. Debbie says, how do cancellations of meetings affect attendance? So when you cancel a meeting, you do have to make sure that in the POMS report, your vice president or membership coordinator is marking that meeting as a holiday. Once that is done, it basically takes it out of the statistics. And the percentage and a lot of the other statistics are based on the number of meetings that happened in the month. So that helps to keep it as a true percentage number, as opposed to having that meeting where theoretically everybody is absent would count as a negative. But so hopefully that helps. Jason has a question. CEUs, a lot of people on the call today, especially from the UK, may be saying, what is a CEU? And I know that's something that isn't used in the UK and in other parts of the world. It is used here in the United States. Unfortunately, we can't edit this report. My recommendation is to simply just ignore this particular field on here. So, and Jason, so unfortunately, no, it can't be removed from the report. All right. Excellent. So again, the remainder of this is to just go through the rest of your goals for the chapter. Again, if you're in the UK, ignore CEUs. Just skip right over that one. But visitors, new memberships, number of members in the chapter. Now, some of these it may make sense to do out of order. So you may want to come down and do number of members in the chapter first, since a lot of your other goals may stem off of that one. So it might make sense to come down and do number of members first. I know that we're at 25 and we want to get to 50. And of course, we can work off of that one to get the number of new memberships that we're going to need. 1, and then we probably need 6 in case somebody drops out, and we need another 6 each month in order to get up to that goal of 50. So again, there's all sorts of ways you can do this. It comes down to sitting down with your leadership team, establishing what your goals are, preparing them ahead of time, and entering them in here. Now, you can stop and quit any time and come back to it. It will, as long as you hit save, it will save what you have here. You can come back to it, fill it out later, and finish it up. Now, the great thing about this is that if I then go back, I'm going to go back to the beginning here, and I'm going to choose View Chapter Goals. Now, again, here you can choose any period you'd like to. By default, it's going to show us the current 6-month period. You can go back further if you want to. It doesn't have to be on a 6-month period. You can choose any start date you'd like to. And what you'll see is that it will start to enter the actual percentages in, the actual results based on the POMS report. So up in Antarctica, my chapter coordinators, my membership coordinators, my vice presidents are not very good. They don't enter POMS reports all that often. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go to a region that I know is using this extensively. And I feel comfortable doing this because it doesn't put any names or anything on here. And I'm just going to pick a random chapter here. And let's take a look at their chapter goals. I'm going to choose a couple of months back here. And here's what they came up with. So they came up with their long-term vision. First step towards getting somewhere is to decide that you're not going to stay where you're at. Mission statement was we can either let it happen or make it happen. And we can see what they're looking for. So what they chose for is they always want to get to 100% attendance, and it put in their actual. In June of this past year, they had an actual of 94. In July, they had 96%. In August, they had 95%, then 93%. And obviously, October hasn't happened yet. They had their goal number of one-to-ones at 368. They actually had 352, 470, 388, so on and so forth. So they were able to go through and achieve some of their goals or really monitor where they are at achieving their goals throughout the year. Of course, if you want to do something with this, you can export it, you can print it and share it with your chapter if you'd like to. If you'd like to use something to fill out offline, my recommendation would be to export this and then use it as a spreadsheet to overwrite what's in there, and then you could go back in and fill it in online in BNI Connect. All right, so we have some more questions and comments. Let me get to those. So Sid says, our chapter has a rule that 3 lates equals 1 absence. Is that a BNI policy or is that a chapter choice? That is a chapter choice. That is not, to the best of my knowledge, and I know we have some executive directors and some area directors, some managing area directors on the call. To the best of my knowledge, that is not a BNI policy. That is a chapter choice. But please do, other directors, correct me if I'm wrong on that. Curtis said, can you show me where you get those ideas? And again, you can get the ideas when you're entering your chapter goals. Click on the Chapter Goal Guide button. So again, Chapter Goal Guide button will give you all of the ideas. That was Curtis's question. And Akil did confirm it is a chapter choice. Thank you. Good to have you on the call. I look forward to seeing you in November. Let's see, Alexander, we have a couple of comments here from Alexander, from Srini, who both kind of say the same thing. When 2 chapter members have a one-to-one, does that count as 2 in the POMS report? So the way that the system works right now is that, yes, when somebody has a one-to-one, both sides of the one-to-one do get credit for that. So if, Alexander, if I have a one-to-one with you, you will get a one-to-one credit in your one-to-one column, and I will get a one-to-one credit in my one-to-one column. when this was put forward, it was understood that some regions around the world may only count one side, but it was felt that both people are putting in the one-to-one effort. Therefore, both people did get credit for the one-to-one from a technically speaking standpoint recording here. So while that may change, it may double the statistics in some areas. That is how it is done here in BNI Connect. When you do, and Sakura just came up with another question. So in order to avoid duplication, when you are entering the one-to-one slips, if you're entering the slips online in BNI Connect, only the first person of the pair needs to actually submit the slip, and both people will get credit for it. If a person tries to enter a second one-to-one slip with the same person for the same day, then they will get a message that says, "Are you sure you want to enter a duplicate slip?" And they have the opportunity to not enter it at that time. So hopefully that helps. Let's see. Carla says, in the BNI Connect site, how do we record this training as a CEU? So to record this training as a CEU, click on the Home button. And here on the My BNI Business page, click on Submit CEU Slip. And right here under the second one, it says 5 podcasts or BNI webinar. Just put a 1 here. Of course, if you don't have that listed there, really just anything that has a 1 credit would work, and click Submit. So Jenny says, will we, the VPs, need to print this? So print what? I'm sorry, I don't know what you're referring to. Are you referring to the report to share with your chapter? And the answer to that one is it depends on the permissions in your particular region. By default, again, by default, members should have access to go to Manage Goals, View Chapter Goals. They will not be able to click on Enter. They won't see that at all. But they should be able to see View Chapter Goals. And from there, they can look at the report themselves. So you shouldn't necessarily have to print it. But if your region does not allow access to viewing the chapter goals, then yes, you would have to print it in order to share it. So I know that was kind of a wishy-washy answer there, but it does depend on the permissions in your region. Paula says, when establishing goals, is it acceptable to only choose 3 or so of the many potential goals listed on Connect? Paula, I would say that especially if you've never done the goals before, anything that you're doing will help to make a positive improvement, and you have to learn to crawl and walk before you run. So definitely I would say just get started on it. I know it's big, I know it's complex, I know there's a lot of stuff in there, but anything that you do will help you to move forward. All right, let's see. So Sid, I will come back to your question after I answer the rest of these. So Deborah says, how did we get there again? So again, back from the Home button, I'm going to go back to my BNI Business page. To get to the chapter goals, you go to Operations, Chapter, Manage Goals, and then enter chapter goals. You can choose any 6-month period, and this will show you that 6-month period. Now, when you're in there, by the way, Debbie, this will answer your question. Once you're in the chapter goals, you can change or modify any of the goals for that 6-month period and just click Save. And that would allow you to change them. Teresa says, can you please send us your top 5 groups using this tool's completed form? I would need to get permission from the executive director. My recommendation would be to, if you can check with your executive director, maybe there's some other in your region that are using it. Otherwise, if you want to send me an email, support@bniconnect.com, I can ask the permission of the executive directors from those regions and ask them for, I might be able to ask them more specifically for their successful chapters using those. Or I could even introduce you to that executive director if that would help, Teresa, or Therese, depending. Barbara says, are POMS results automatically input each month? So yes, as long as you're inputting the POMS, so your person that's doing that data entry, they will automatically be passed over to the goals program. So you don't need to do anything extra to get them into the goals program. As long as you are doing that reporting in BNI Connect, it will get automatically ported over. All right, let's see. Liz says, why do I look back, when I look back at previous months, why do I see zeros? So that would just mean that no goals were entered by the previous leadership teams. Let's see. Alexander says, one-to-one follow-up as the vice president entering the weekly chapter POMS. I would enter 2 for each one-to-one between members, 1 for each member. Yes, 1. If you're entering them from paper, it would be 1 for each member. But again, check, please, please, please always check with your director consultant of your chapter or your executive director, because different regions do have slightly different policies on certain things. So please, please check with your director consultant or your executive director. Brenda says, can ambassadors see all chapter goals? As an ambassador, you should be able to see any, again, this kind of depends on the permissions in your region, but by selecting a chapter from the drop-down list here, if you have access to that chapter, you should be able to go in and go to Manage Goals and view the goals for whichever chapters you have access to in the drop-down list. So hopefully that helps. Let's see. Gloria says, I may already know, but who of the 3 should visit this seminar? Gloria, I would say that it would be great if your whole team could review this seminar in order to all be on the same page with it. So I would say the top 3, the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, or again, if you're in the UK, your chapter director, membership coordinator, and secretary. My email is support, S-U-P-P-O-R-T, at BNIConnect.com. Support@BNIConnect.com. So hopefully that helps. All right, let's see. Robin says, is everyone on the leadership team able to get to the traffic lights? And if so, how do they do that? And again, this is always going to depend on the permissions in your particular region. But the place that you would find the traffic lights report would be to go to Reports, Chapter. And if you have access to it, the traffic lights report should be towards the bottom. And it says Chapter Traffic Lights. You could choose the month, click Done, and go. And here you go. This would be the traffic lights report for this particular region. All right, so hopefully that answers your question, Robin. All right. Shalana says, if I have a if I had a chapter with goals for last year and they just did not use the goals template, can I go back and put in the goals now? Sure, you can go back and backdate them if you would like to. It should populate afterwards as well with the actual results. Barbara says, do goals need to be input in order to trigger the POMs? No, again, the POMs is a separate entry, so the vice president or membership coordinator by default, you do have to enter the POMs on a weekly basis, but there's nothing you have to do in conjunction with the goals. They're two separate functions, entering POMs and the chapter goals. But once you enter the POMs and have goals filled out, the results will automatically populate. Does that make sense, Barbara? All right, excellent. Let's see. Sheila says, because it's reflected on the traffic light report, is there a difference in submitting CEUs online and filling out a CEU slip? Are they recorded and reflected differently on the traffic light report? No. All of these slips that you enter online, the way it works is that if you fill out a slip here, such as a referral slip, and you pass a referral online through here, that is essentially the exact same thing as turning in a piece of paper. So if you do it here, you don't need to turn in a piece of paper at the meeting. You do want to stand up and announce it and say that you had a referral, say that you had the CEU, say that you had the one-to-one. You want to celebrate the activity at the chapter meeting. But if you enter it online, you don't need to put the paper in because it's already in the POMS report for your vice president. So it actually saves your leadership team some time in the data entry portion. Michelle says, can visitor hosts enter goals for the chapter? By default, no, but that is definitely something to talk to your director, consultant, or executive director about. Let's see. And Sheila, I think that was a duplicate of your other question about traffic lights. I think I answered that already. And let's see, Scott says, what CEU option do you select? Again, in United States English, we do have BNI webinar here listed on the second line. So I would put in a 1 credit there. Hopefully that helps with that, Scott. All right, let's see. I think we just have 2 more questions from Sid here. Sid says, I think there's a form on BNI Connect that enables the member to give a detailed summary of their business profile, etc. It's called Launch or something like that, and it is used for one-on-ones. So there is a report where you can run. If you have filled out your profile online in BNI Connect, you can run a report that you can bring to a one-to-one meeting, and that is to go to, let me switch back to my own here, and I'll show you that report. But if you have filled out your profile online in BNI Connect, you can go to Reports, Chapter, and there is a report called the Member Details Report. And from here, one thing that we're taught is that we should be doing a gains exchange before we go to a one-to-one meeting with somebody. And you can do that by clicking on View Member Gains, choose the person from your chapter, or if you'd like to print out a copy for yourself, choose yourself, and click Go, and this will show me my gains profile. I could also print it out from here, or I could highlight it and email it to somebody if I wanted to. I could grab it and copy and paste it into an email. You can also view their TOPS profile and their commercials. So that's all from that report. So hopefully that answers your question, Sid. There might be another form that you're referring to, but that would be a local form, not in a report. Rebecca says, how can I email my chapter through BNI Connect? The way to email your chapter, so if I wanted to email, let's say I'm the chapter president, I need to get a message out to all of my members. I would go to Operations Chapter, and there's a button here that says Create Email. If you click Email My Chapter, that will give you the most current email address list for your chapter. You can highlight them, copy them, and then all you need to do is to open up your own email program. And I recommend putting it in the BCC line, and then you can just type out your message and click Send. All right, so that's the easiest way to get your most current email address list for your chapter. So hopefully that helps. Can you edit that member list, Sid asks. I mean, once you copy it and paste it, you can do whatever you'd like with it. There's no way to directly edit it here. You know, this isn't a typable field, but if you needed to take a couple of people out of it, if it's somebody that's permanently not in your chapter anymore or somebody that's just joined, the best way to do is to make sure you work with your regional office to make sure that they've been entered into BNI Connect, and that will resolve itself. So hopefully that answers your question, Rebecca. Marquita says, BNI Connect only allows me to enter one speaker per meeting. Is there a setting that allows 2 speakers per meeting? And yes, there is. However, it does need to be done by your regional office. They can set your chapter as a 2-speaker chapter, which would allow you to put a second speaker in for that meeting. So please do talk to your executive director or your director consultant, and they can make that change to your chapter in the system. Erica says, what's the difference between a webinar and a training module? Again, they're just descriptive names. So I would say, usually webinar is a training module that happens online like we're doing now as opposed to in person. But again, they're mostly descriptive names, and there are different definitions of CEUs based on region. So do check with your executive director or director consultant. Sheila says, this is excellent training. Is there general training or recordings for using BNI Connect? Absolutely. So the best place to go for that is to the support site. Click this question mark in the upper right-hand corner. That will bring you over to our support site. So it will bring you to support.bniconnect.com. You'll see our upcoming webinars all listed here. You'll also see a ton of documentation. So for example, today's chapter goals, you'll see that here, entering chapter goals. You can look at that step by step by step. It explains all the success drivers, how to save your goals, et cetera, et cetera. But also on this chapter training and documentation, you'll see recorded webinars. If you go into recorded webinars, month by month, we record all of our webinars. We do a full series every month, so building VCP, that's how to fill out your profile, online slips, how to enter the online slips, and connections, groups, and testimonials. If you'd like to review them, you can see them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week here or on our YouTube channel. Or, of course, you're welcome to join us for our live trainings. Now, a good referral for me is if you found today's format helpful, if you found today's information helpful, good referrals to please let your other members know about these webinars. Our very next webinar is going to be Wednesday. So 2 days from now, we're going to be going over the leadership team tools and reports. That's going to be at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. And for those of you across the pond, that's going to be 8 p.m. GMT, followed by another webinar on Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, 5 p.m. GMT. That's going to be building VCP. So please do join us. That would make an excellent referral to me to please let your members know about them. And I know there's a couple of people from Europe on the call, like Akil, and I think Bernard was on earlier. If you'd like to and Jason Smith as well, if you guys would like to schedule any of these webinars at a time that's more reasonable to our European community, just get in touch with me separately, and we can, I'd be happy to schedule them at times that are convenient for you. All right. Unfortunately, Akil, they will be in English. I don't speak Dutch, unfortunately, so as long as your members are willing to work through English with me, I'd be happy to work with them. All right, let's see. Gloria, I don't have any specific secretary-treasurer webinars. However, the Leadership Team Tools and Reports webinar is one that I've kind of put together for an entire leadership team. So it goes through secretary-treasurer functions as well as president functions as well as vice president functions. So it's not specific to a role. The reason I do it that way is because different regions do things differently. So in some places, something that a secretary might do, in other places they might have the vice president do that or vice versa, or the president, so on and so forth. So you're welcome to join us for the Leadership Team Tools and Reports. Again, that one is on Wednesday. All right. Curtis says, how do I get my new members MSP training? So these are just the BNI Connect webinars. To find your local trainings as far as the, for example, the Member Success Program, you can click on, my recommendation, click on Regional Website up here in the upper right-hand corner. This is obviously going to bring up my own personal regional website, which is Rhode Island, but if you click on it, it'll bring up yours. And from here, go to the Events Calendar. On the events calendar, you will see all of your own events that happen in your particular region. So, obviously the ones in my region are going to be different than the ones in your region. If there aren't any on it, unfortunately, those are types of trainings that happen locally. So please do contact your executive director or the director consultant for your chapter and find out when the next one is. They might not be scheduling them up on the calendar there. They might be in another place. So hope that helps. Curtis, if you're unsure who your director consultant is, shoot me an email and I'll help you find out who it is. Again, that's support.bniconnect.com. Ryan and Carl both ask, where can we access this webinar offline? Is there a replay available? Again, click this question mark. That will take you to the support site, and you can go to the recorded webinars. You can also go to youtube.com/BNI Connect Global, and this webinar will be posted up there shortly. So hopefully in the next couple of days. Okay. Let's see. Larry says, what is VCP? VCP stands for Visibility plus Credibility equals Profitability. Visibility plus credibility equals profitability, which is a BNI concept. All right. Any other questions? Good luck with your client, Maria. All right, Sid, I still had one question from you that said to wait to the end, and I'll answer that question now if nobody has any additional questions. All right, off-topic question. Why does BNI Connect not allow for a CC of the BNI visitor invitation? We don't get to see what went out for visitors days, etc. It would be an excellent tool. It is a visually appealing email. Why isn't there a CC function or allowing another email address so we can CC ourselves? The reason why is that it was when it was first developed, and for those of you that aren't sure what I'm talking about, there's a function in BNI that allows you to send a very quick email invitation to a potential visitor. And you do that by going to Operations Chapter. And the same place that we made an email to our chapter, but here under Create Email, there's a function that says Email Visitor Invitation. So if I wanted to send an invitation to somebody, I would just type their name in. So let's say Scott Smith, their company name, Smith Co., their email address. Now I'm going to put my own email address in here, jeremy@therightclick.net, and a personal message. And this is going to be the first paragraph of the email. So I could say it was great meeting you at the networking event. I would love to introduce you to my referral team. Now, when I click send, it just takes this information, puts it into a email template, and sends it out. Now, to answer your question of why it was done this way, again, it was just done, this particular function was done a very long time ago, and it was just a very quick way to get this invitation email created. At the time, there were a number of changes happening in the system, and this, within the time frame and the budget that we had, this was what we were able to get accomplished at the time. That being said, improvements are being made to the system all the time. For example, we have a release coming out at the end of this month, or towards the end of this month, which has some new functionality. So things are changing, things are improving. Can it be fixed? Of course. It's a matter of prioritization and what they decide to put into the system next. Now, that being said, you are welcome to, we do have a forum on the support site where we get requests from people like yourself and everybody else to let us know what you think should be fixed. You can get there, again, click on the question mark. That will bring you to the support site. And in that, if you scroll down towards the bottom in the public forums, there is a suggestions and enhancement request, and I'm 99% sure that your particular request is in here a couple of times, but you may want to find it and make a, so if I just do a search here, for example, invitation. So visitor invitation email tracking is a recent one that was put in here, and invitation history. There are some answers as to why we do certain things, but also to request for additional functionality. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that BNI Connect is a, you'll notice there's no advertising on it anywhere. It is a self-funded project, so the project board, not me, I don't make decisions on what goes in. I just support what's there. But there is a project board that decides what goes in next, what happens, based on other things that are happening at the time. So, does that give you a sufficient answer for what you were looking for, Sid? All right. Believe it or not, I think that was the absolute last question or comment. Does anybody at all have any additional questions, comments, or concerns? I do support all day, every day, so I am always happy to stay on these calls as long as a single person has any questions whatsoever. That being said, I do know that you guys have other things to do today, so I do want to respect your time as well. Carl says, I have a comment, so be happy to hear your comment. And if you have any additional questions after the webinar is over, please do feel free to email us at support@bniconnect.com. Again, that's support@bniconnect.com. All right, Carl says, on the visitor invitation, just send it to yourself and send it directly from your email. Exactly. That's the easiest way to see what the email looks like. Just send it to yourself with your email address, and that will show you what it looks like. So, all right. On that note, I'm going to say to everybody, thank you so very much for being here today. I look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. And again, a good referral from me. Please do invite people to these webinars. Our next one is on Wednesday, Leadership Team Tools and Reports. And for regular members, our very next one is on Friday, Building VCP with BNI Connect. Have a great day, everyone, and happy connecting.